All right. So we have everyone here. I guess I'm coming through.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering if my audio was somehow messed up. All right. So I have a light agenda today. Next week, we'll have Intel and Ericsson present a proposal on DPU-IP-centric provisioning and management of an edge location. That one I think will generate a fair bit of back and forth discussion. So that'll be a very interesting topic. For today, I want to discuss two things. So I have a very light fixed agenda. And partly that's because the working groups are doing their jobs. So the working groups are working through the technical things. There's nothing for us to approve. The direction they're going with nailing down all of the host interaction and DPU boot requirements and operations is super important. That's driving along very nicely. And then in the API group, the discussions around, the combination of storage and networking APIs and the interaction of the APIs is going along very nicely. Both of those calls are well attended by technical folks with a wide variety of contributions. So and I know some of you join those calls as well, and I have been, and I'm very happy with their progress. I don't want to load them up with anything new, which is why I don't have topics like what do we tell the working groups to do. I think the POC group is proceeding with multiple POCs that we agreed on, over the last 6 weeks ago, and work is going on there. And we'll start to see, I think, readouts from those POCs here, maybe in a couple weeks or a month. We'll start to see readouts from those at this level to see if we want to redirect or to understand or to vote on what they're proposing that go into new repositories or expansion of repository or a definition of a service, and what the learnings are in terms of actually using OPI to produce to put a working system together for some particular use case or purpose. I thought what we should do is, though, go over lab equipment selection and how we actually start getting gear into hurricane and electric, and what are we missing from that? Do we need to lean on, all of our participants for more input there? And then kind of a what's next, what are our future agendas? What are we going to have to decide on in the TSC? So an open discussion on that. Does anyone else have an agenda item? All right, so VinCat, on the lab equipment selection, do we have a final set of selection criteria to review, or what's your proposal for how to handle that?
Yeah, so I'm traveling, so I'm maybe out of touch by a week. A quick update on the overall lab is we are looking at signing. We have to sign the papers. Yeah, we selected Hurricane Electric, but there is some legal paperwork that needs to happen. So we did receive some material from them. Like I said, I'm traveling. I couldn't read that myself, but we agreed that if any of the if two of us are this group of folks who are looking at lab, if two of us read that and approve, we should proceed. So that's what we agreed. So Sridhar, if he's here, maybe he has a better update on that. I'm again, and I don't have this, each of the vendors' specific products that we need to buy. yeah, maybe I can try to get something over email and
Yeah,
then
email's great. Yeah, we just need to know. I think what we need to do is agree on what the selection criteria are, and we also need to know if we have any equipment being volunteered, and then we also need to know what the compatibility matrix. And I believe we had a chunk of that. Who's driving that for you, Venkat?
So, so let's take one at a time, right? So we said we will keep one DPU in one server, and so that is reasonable to start with the power requirements, and it's still early in the game for some of the complicated issues that might show up if you overload it, right? So that is good. The second part is which server for which company DPU. I think we strictly want to go by what the DPU vendor says instead of having a list, right? So in a way, it's indirectly selected. Each DPU vendor is saying, hey, here is my DPU. This is the only server that you should use, so that early on it helps. So maybe that selection is also easy. There are a couple of switches and others.
Hello.
Sorry.
So the 6 research institute are there.
Yeah, so there's not, and there are like 1 or 2 switches that we have, and I think we have written down some guidelines on it being vendor neutral. One way to deal with it would be to, let a subset of folks who are looking at lab to select it. If required, we could even take out, it can be done by the folks who are not actually in the manufacturing of those, or neither ODMs or OEMs of those switches. So that way we're all neutral. So I think our guidelines right now are good enough. They are in some of the web pages. So we could come back over email with an update. Sridhar, you have something, please go ahead.
All right. All right, that'll be fine. Let's do the update on selection criteria details by email, and we'll see if we have anything we need to. And I guess the final selection, I guess we should have a proposal that we vote on in the TSC, or do we want to vote to empower, the lab subgroup to make the decisions and get the equipment delivered to Hurricane Electric and so on?
I mean, I think we could vote on it here, but we already agreed in principle to the example bill of materials.
Mm-hmm.
And so in my mind, it's more a matter of looking at what the vendors put forward for the requirements for their specific hardware, and then look at the budget and see, does it fit in the budget if it's not being donated.
Right. So you're in favor of, empowering the essentially the lab subgroup to make the decision.
Right, and then probably need to take it to the board to get the PO signed.
All right. So let's do it this way. So lab subgroup can create the basically a full equipment proposal.
Correct.
We'll review in TSC, then approve in board. All right. Okay, any other thoughts on lab? I don't want to beat it too hard, but okay. All right. Now, so what topic, other than the lab, which is obvious, and reviewing proposals that come in like we'll do next week, and then reviewing and voting on what comes out of our working groups. What is, would, again, all necessary and good functions. What else does the TSC need to be doing? So we set policies. I don't know that we have a lot of additional policies to set. They're working well. The outreach group is working well within the content guidelines. I don't see any more struggle over the content that's going out for education. So what else should the TSC be doing? What should our job be? Or again, if you're not on the TSC, what do you think our job should be? Other than the ones I just said. Is there anything that we're not doing that we should be doing? What I don't want to do is repeat the work that's in the working group. So like, I don't want to, other than maybe, the occasional general discussion on a meta topic for what the working group's doing, but I don't want to try to discuss boot in here. We're already doing in the working group, and having two overlapping but not identical sets of people discussing the same topic is a recipe for chaos. So thoughts? And
Joe,
raise your hand or just speak up.
Joe, I would say in my mind, the main focus needs to be maintained. So the TS group the TS meeting should keep us in focus of what the goal is and make sure that we don't stray, and reinforce any direction that we have selected to go on, and make sure all the work groups are working towards the same goal and not straying off to different directions.
Which, okay, do you think that they are?
I think that I'll give you an example, and I spoke to you about this when we were talking earlier this week. For example, we said let's do Nginx. So in my mind, we need to create an end-to-end structure of what that will look like, so it will be repeatable for other workloads as well. So I would like to see how we do from start to finish the Nginx work, and then have eventually a POC and some sort of a code that we can show, that we can share, that we can hopefully deploy, and then repeat that with other use cases.
So we have a team working on that, correct, Tim?
Yeah, we're doing some work on that. I don't know that it's as extensive yet as what Alad is suggesting, but I would hope it would evolve into that with a larger group down the road.
Okay.
That's the right goal, Alad. I would agree with that goal.
So so Tim, what would you need to say, take the, I mean, again, we're not a single company, so we can't legislate you have to go work on this, because people just stop showing up if we do that, if they don't want to work on that. Again, this is industry consortium, volunteer, and we're doing it because we think it's the right thing for the overall ecosystem, and we think having the overall ecosystem be stronger benefits all of our companies, both individually and collectively, because we all believe DPUs are important for the future of compute, network, and storage infrastructure, and actually for optimizing applications and AI/ML and all manner of things, right? Because we all know the industry trends in the analog. That's why we're all here. Now that said, legislating what people work on and don't work on, we have some power to do that by voting on, yes, that's the way we're going to do X, where somebody proposes X. But what I don't want to do is restrict proposals and, sets of member companies volunteering work, and ideas and contributions to the OPI, overall OPI project in terms of open source code or specifications, or in any strong way up front. In other words, we need to be very open about listening to all the proposals and taking them all in. And now in the discussion, we may be able to realign thinking or understand how that's going to fit into the overall and provide some guidance. Does that make sense, Avad?
Yeah, but you're saying two things that are a little bit contradicting.
I know. Go ahead.
I'm not talking about proposals. We can have proposals, but the proposal should be under a guideline, meaning if it's not open source or if it's not vendor agnostic, it shouldn't be a proposal that we look at. And that's on proposals. But on the other hand, if we're a group that gets together, agrees that we need to do this work for DPUs and agrees on what we're doing, and then you're saying, but on the other hand, I cannot restrict people from doing what they want to do, what's the point of having the group? In my mind, the point of having the TSC and the point that we came together for was to agree on what we do together and then work together towards that goal. If you're saying people can still work on whatever they want, then we'll still be unfocused.
No, I didn't say it quite that way. What I said is I can't tell someone you have to go work on X. What we can do is we can say Z is not going to be part of OPI and vote on that, right? We can also say that, alpha is part of OPI and vote on that. We've done that many times already. We've said that some particular thing is out of scope. We're not going to look at that. We can revisit it at some future time. And we've also said this is a service we want, and we all agree that that's a sufficiently good one to make that the OPI standard, for lack of a better term. To be OPI compliant, you have to support secure ZTP and OTel. Is two of the obvious examples that didn't draw a lot of controversy. Now, as we get into doing more things and having more companies involved, again, we have to look at the proposals that are coming in and say, does this fit our overall mission? And again, we're going to do that next week for something. We've done that on a couple of others. And some of them we don't know yet until we see more as to exactly how that fits into the overall OPI. And we can say, oh, yeah. I mean, again, people can go do whatever they want outside of OPI, and they can even use OPI. But the evaluation is on what components go, that is part of OPI, and everyone shall do it to be OPI compliant. That's sort of the power that the TSC has. And the boot's going to be the same way. Right now, there's all kinds of boot discussions going on in a bunch of different vectors. It's going to get narrowed down to a proposal of one or maybe two approaches. And then we'll say, yeah, we agree that we're going to write the standard for those two approaches. And then we'll have to figure out how to actually write a standard as opposed to open source within this part of the Linux Foundation. But we have lots of people who've done that and know how to do that. And there'll be some teething pains, but we can write a standard that says here's the requirements of the process for boot for an OPI compliant DPU. And then we obviously want all the DPU vendors to then comply to the one method or those methods, because that's good for everyone, right? Because you can't easily put them in servers, no one's going to buy them. Okay, and if we can, so getting that worked out, and again, we have the power to say, yes, those are the two methods. We all vote on it. We agree. That becomes what we do. Does that make sense a lot? So it's not that we can't put any restrictions, but what we can't do is say everyone must go work on Engine X, and if you're not working on Engine X, we don't want to talk to you. That we can't do because we have no power to do that. I mean, some of this has, in fact, like all open source projects, companies and people have to do it voluntarily because there's a overall benefit to both them and their company and the industry as a whole. And so the motivations for people doing it are varied, but that's what it requires. Does that make sense a lot? I mean, I've thought a lot about this and whatnot. And or does anyone else have an opinion? Because I've droned on a bit, but I'm tired because I was up very early this morning. Any other opinions on this topic? And a lot, does that make sense, what I'm saying?
There is a difference in my mind between components that we all need and guidelines for provisioning, guidelines for booting, guidelines for northbound, southbound, which again, we all need because these are pieces that we will need for the entire picture. But what I'm having trouble with is if I'm a member of an organization that voted on something, that agreed on something, and I didn't agree with what they voted on, and I decided, you know what, no, I don't think that's a good direction, I'm going to do something else. Then what am I doing in that organization? So I understand the fact that you cannot force people to work on something, but I would like to think that if we came together as a group and agreed on something, this is what we're focused on and this is what we're working towards. Now, people can contribute in many different ways, in any way that they want to contribute. And I'm not saying we shouldn't listen to other proposals. I'm just saying, again, I look at us as a startup, and the startup needs focus. And a startup needs focus to get its first product out the door. And as far as I'm concerned, we don't have, not a product, but quote unquote product yet out the door. And that's what we should strive towards.
Other input and thoughts?
Yeah, it seems like at the end of the day, Joe, we need to provide, end-to-end example. So somebody can say, hey, if I want to build something around OPI, show me an example of how you do that, right? And the example pulls in all the pieces in a very opinionated way. But the point of it is to show someone who wants to build their own version and their own opinion and their own use case that here's how you use our pieces, right? Here's an actual example. And it would be good if the example actually has a utility, right? This is what we hope to get from the Engine X work at the end of the day.
Yeah,
I wish it would go faster, but it's going to take a while.
right. So I agree with that, Tim, and the Engine X work is one example. I think, we don't necessarily have to restrict ourselves to a single example. We don't want 20, but we definitely can have a couple or three that are being worked in parallel because again, the DPU use cases is so diverse.
Yeah, and certainly if they're in different domains, or if they exercise the APIs in different ways and different mixes, then all those examples have value independent of each other and in combination with each other.
Right, because it'll show us what gaps we have on the common services and whether those services actually work together, in my opinion. Yeah, it's a good way to phrase it, Tim. Other thoughts on this? Or is there
just to elevate the discussion a little bit here, Joe? One of the functions of the TSC, right? When you think about an organization like this, we've got these working groups, we've got the TSC, and then we have like outreach, which also, provides output and data. And I think this is an opportunity for us to align on, setting goalposts or events, right, that are going to drive, give us a goalpost, right? Like if we're talking about creating a reference design with Engine X, if we picked an event that's coming up far enough in the future that we think we can, have a demo at that event, then the team in the outreach committee can get together and start mapping that out. And I think this is a great example. I think that's what the community needs, is an example end to end that we can showcase. And then we can just talk about, how we build from here, how this is an example, this is a reference. And we want to continue down this path of, being inclusive and allowing, creating a framework that supports expansion in the DPU space. And I think that's what, could be helpful here in this session, in the TSC meetings.
Yeah, so that, okay, so I mean, we could get status on the examples that we have. Again, we can take in new examples, new end-to-end solutions, if you will, or examples or use cases that and evaluate whether that's a good one to pursue, right? So we can get status, and as a result of the status and the review, we can say, are we missing things that we need the working groups to go off and solve? Okay. Other thoughts?
So my thought on this topic is, I think TSC can control some approaches that we think are not appropriate for the OPI project, right? If we say this is the roadmap we have, and this is the architectural vision we have, and this is where we want the project to go. But, and then we can say these are the top 3 things that we want to focus on in the beginning and then grow from there. At that point, if there's a vendor who wants to contribute something that doesn't belong in that top 3, but still philosophically is aligned with what OPI wants to do, I think we should be accommodating enough to accept that work, right? So which is why I kind of agree with the comment you made earlier, Joe, that there has to be a difference between what a single organization, how a single organization operates versus how a community project operates, right? So there has to be some amount of freedom given to member companies to contribute where in areas that are aligned with their own priorities in some ways.
Yeah, good. Yeah, good comments and discussion. Other thoughts on this? Right, and what a project is going to actually contribute back to OPI. So again, if I had some proprietary code and I'm like, I want to deploy that on an OPI DPU, and I say, here are the OPI things that I used, and here's the ones I'm missing. And for the missing ones, we need that developed. And here I'm going to contribute part of that. So let's suppose there were 3 services missing, and the company or set of companies with proprietary code said, hey, so here's one of the services, there are 3 missing, we need the other 2 somehow, because we don't think that would be right to keep that proprietary. We've just expanded OPI and provided useful services for others. And again, what the TSC can do is say, yeah, A and B are necessary. Thank you for contributing A. C should not be an OPI common service or specification. That C will not benefit anyone. C is going to cause problems, whatever reason. That's my other way of thinking about this. And my thinking is sort of along the lines of what I've seen in every SDO I've worked with over the last 20 years, which is overall we kind of all know the problems to solve. And sometimes there are competing ways to solve it, and that's what the voting is for, or get agreement that the way that was proposed, that there's no objections to it. But a lot of stuff comes in all the time, and rather than trying to legislate up front, you work on this, you work on this, you work on this, our job is to keep the mission in mind and go, yes, that fits the mission, or no, we need to tweak it so it fits the mission, or no, that doesn't fit the mission. Does that make sense to everyone? Again, if you disagree, because I don't mind disagreement. That's how we get to better policies, better answers, and better operation. And I take silence as, yeah, you pretty much agree, because there's no point going me too, or little emojis, thumbs up, and stuff like that. So I assume that if you disagree or have a variant, type it in chat, or just go ahead and speak up, and let's come to a conclusion, come to a if not a consensus, which we usually reach, at least we'll try that. It's a way to go. Okay, so anyway, good discussion on that topic. Thinking will have to evolve. Again, as we get more things happening, which they are, which that's what I'm happy about, is that we have more proposals coming in, more working groups, more projects going. But as time goes on, to Alad's point, we will have to take a hard look at what we're doing and say, is this effective? Or what part of this is effective? What do we need to emphasize and agree to either drop or double down on? And okay, all right. Any other topics that we should be dealing with? Organizational ones, industry ones, anything critical that you think we're missing, or the working groups are missing? Because we can always tell the working groups, hey, go give us a deeper evaluation of some particular technical area. And again, we can use the Teams chat, and we can use the mailing list as well. If something occurs to you while you're in your next meeting, and you're like, oh, I should have brought that up. We have forums where you can bring it up. Murcia, of course.
Yeah, so maybe if something is important for OPI, but no member volunteers, maybe the TSC can decide to hire, I don't know, a third-party company to implement that feature. I see this happening in other communities where it's like nobody allocates resources, but everybody agrees that that's important for the group, and then budget is being spent to hire somebody to implement that feature. I think that's a TSC.
Yeah, in principle.
Item.
Yeah, so Sridhar, in principle, we can spend a budget that way, right? We can propose to the board that we contract for piecework, right?
Yes, we can.
Okay, So if we have such a thing come up, then that's a good point, Murchia. All right, anything else? Yeah, we did that in when I was working with DMTF. They had a few contractors that implemented things like translators that everyone would benefit from. So to translate from one modeling language to another, for example, based on specifications we wrote, they went and then implemented like I say, a translator. This was Yang to basically a Yang translator, so Yang to Redfish translator. All right. Any other thoughts? Final thoughts? I'll give you guys about a minute to think, and then if there's nothing else, I'll conclude the call. All right then. Yeah, go ahead.
No, just a reminder. If you have received a link to vote, and if you haven't voted for the website, please do. We want to decide this week itself and start the work this week itself, if possible. So I request those who haven't voted, please vote.
Yeah, there's a new link that showed up.
Yeah.
I voted yesterday, so I
Thanks.
stopped being a pokey puppy and voted yesterday. All right. All right. Thank you guys. We'll end the call, and I think next week will generate some very interesting discussion.